on, guys? You're at your local ham sandwich here, bringing you the latest Centur-Ion deck profile. Really, it's a White Forest Centur-Ion deck profile post info. Got some requests to do this, and I am very glad to bring it to you guys. This will be the deck that I am grinding for the upcoming regional season. If it doesn't go well, I'll switch off to Fiendsmith Bell. But we've covered a lot of Centur-Ion on the channel, and of course, we're going to keep doing that. So we're going to get straight into the deck profile. The White Forest Centur-Ion build here. It's more White Forest deck than it is a Centur-Ion deck, but still the Centur-Ion's in it. So we have 3 Stellar, 3 LZ, 2 Sylvie, 1 Russia, 1 Tails, 1 Woes. I think this is decently standard for the toy or Centur-Ion or even pure variant of White Forest. I think Sylvie, I've tried her at 3, but on her own she doesn't do a whole lot. You want to see on one of these two or both. They're both your best White Forest starters, and they can bridge you into your Centur-Ion lines. And if you see Tails with your stand-up or Emblema or whatever, Tails can get you into your White Forest line, which assumedly you haven't used normal summon yet because the Emblema or the stand-up is going to special summon your Centur-Ion monsters. So really compact. I think this is probably the best ratios. Maybe a second Russia is fine. She's more of a brick. She's not your starter, so I think 1 is preferable in my opinion. Yeah, for Centur-Ion and toy, I think these are probably the best ratios. You can toy with Sylvie and Russia being the ratios, but I think these 2 at 3 are preferable. And then I'm going to move on to the Centur-Ion package. Like I said, it is a rather small package comparatively to some of the other Centur-Ion decks that we put on the channel. So we have 1 Primera, 1 Trudea, 1 Gargoyle. I'm opting for 3 Emblema Oath and 1 stand-up, and then the Phalanx and the Wake Up. In this deck, I think 3 and 3 is fine. For the format, though, with how many hand traps you have to run, you kind of want to consolidate. So I figured cutting stand-up down to 1 and Emblema to 3, it still is fine, because obviously Emblema can set stand-up and you're not restricted to Centur-Ion synchros. But if you see stand-up plus Emblema, you can Emblema for Primera and then stand-up for Trudea and Gargoyle and still have plenty of synchro plays. I think with Emblema, in this deck, you almost always, if you're going for a monster, you want to go for Primera, because if you go for Trudea will be stuck in the back row. You'll be Centur-Ion locked. You can't go into your White Forest combos. If you only see Centur-Ion stuff and non-engine in your hand, obviously you just want to try to Calamity Lock, so that's fine. But if you see both, you want to prioritize being able to use both engines. So, and then these two, the Wake Up and the Phalanx, I think. Wake Up is probably optional. Phalanx, not so much. I like both for playing through Nibiru, because sometimes you can go full Centur-Ion combo first, and then you'll put Wake Up in the grave, Wake Up will send Phalanx to the grave. And so typically that inboard of just the Centur-Ion stuff is the usual stand-up plus Auxilla plus Trudea in the back row. So if you extend further into White Forest and get Nibiru, you can go, okay, Phalanx, bring back Auxilla, put Primera in grave, and you're still set up for a Calamity Lock on the opponent's turn. So it's not too bad. Wake Up sometimes can also be kind of cheeky. If you set up the board right, you can use Wake Up plus 1 of the level 4 White Forest tuners in your opponent's draw phase to make Calamity, which is really silly. Not always optimal, because obviously they have nothing on field in draw phase unless they've Nibiru'd you, I guess. So in perm is a card. But again, something cheeky you can do with the quick effects there. And then finally, I am also running the Toy Box engine. I think with any White Forest variant, except for possibly Runic, it's kind of mandatory. So I am choosing to run 2 soldier, 1 tank, and 3 box. I will typically side out one of the soldiers in the grind game, or in game 2 and 3. But I like having the second soldier just because it's a monster, but it's technically an extra spell trap option. And if you draw a soldier plus a stellar or LZ, it still gets you to the toy box, which gets you to the tank, which is more extension. And in theory, you can also, I don't always recommend it, but if you see only soldier you can get to box, then box effect, you can set the other soldier and the toy tank and just keep the soldier on the field face down for the opponent's turn, so when they go to battle phase, you can use the battle destruction effect of toy box and get advantage off of toy soldier. The toy stuff can make the boards a bit cloggy, I've noticed. You kind of have to play around that a little bit in terms of what you're sending when and what you're keeping on board, especially with the Centur-Ions also being continuous spell traps. So it's an interesting dynamic, but you can play around it pretty well. It's not game breaking. But that's it for the main engine. I believe 26 main engine cards. It's 42 card deck, so the non-engine. I'm trying to, like I said, I was trying to consolidate some of the main engine to make room for all the non-engine, because this format really necessitates a ton of non-engine. So I've got 16 non-engine slots out of 42, 3 Ash Blossom, 3 Nibiru, 3 Bestials, 1 Magnemite, 1 Baldric, 1 Drew Swarm, 2 Veiler because it's searchable. Move these out of the way. 3 Imperm, and then I've got 2 Skill Drain. Skill Drain in this deck, really funny, just because you can flip it on your opponent's turn, then on your turn, if you have follow-up, which you almost always do, thanks to Elzad's recursion effect, if you remember to activate it, you could just send it away on your turn. Of course, that unlocks their monster effects, but if you skill drain them at the right time, they may not have ended on a very great board. So yeah, 16, I think the Bestials are great because obviously against Fiendsmith and Yubel, there's a lot of good targets for it, but even in your deck, if you get stopped only on, say, your Ursiella, you can banish one of your lights and then summon one of the Bestials and extend it to Auxilla. So it's not bad. It's kind of the same theory that Pure Centurion had a little while ago, where they are kind of engine pieces, but they're really good non-engine for the format. I think Nibiru is necessitated this format. If Nibiru plus any of the negation ones is always decently good. And this deck has a fair bit of recursion, so if you have to Nibiru your own board, you can bring it all back decently well. And then Ash, Imperm, pretty standard. Veiler, Ursiella can search it, so I cut it down to 2 to consolidate. You can argue running 3, but I've only got the 2. So that's it for the main deck, 42 cards, as I said. From the performance at locals on Tuesday, it seemed pretty well. I wasn't really bricking at all, which is great. I'd spent like almost 2 days trying to mess with the ratios and get it all correct. It seemed to work out. So moving on to the extra deck, we still have the tried and true Centur-Ion extra deck package, 1 Auxillo, 1 Legatia, 1 Crimson Dragon, 1 King Calamity, Rest His Soul, and 1 Cosmic Blazar. That's the usual Synchro 12 package. In this deck, you can very easily go into Blazar on your turn and Calamity on your opponent's turn. Once Calamity gets banned, we just play 2 Blazar. They're no once per turn on the gates. It's very good. And then Chaos Angel for the Bestials, and for just the White Force package can naturally go into it pretty decently. Scarlight for time, and then the White Forest package itself, the 1 Diabel, the 1 Ursiella, and the 1 Silvera. All very good cards. These 2 are your combo pieces. This is your interruption. You can cycle this a couple times in a turn. It's not once per turn, because Diabel can summon it, and Woes can summon it, and you can just take advantage of the tuners in graveyard, shuffling it back and all that. And then for the 6 package as well, I do run the Tri-Edge Master. Depending on what your line is and what your hand is, you can choose to go Ursiella and Tri-Edge into Auxilla. Sometimes you want to go into Diabel instead of the Tri-Edge, but Toy Tank can let you do both by bringing back Ursiella and then you synchro crazy. And then for the Diabel, I also run the Zapper Shrimp. I haven't seen this come up yet, but in theory it's really good against Tempai. I think against Tempai you always want to end on Diabel. You basically always want to end on Diabel anyway, but against Tempai specifically, because if they activate Song and Summoning, Diabel can respond to the activation of the card, summon Zap or Shrimp, and you pop it. So it's pretty decent. And then for the last two synchros, I haven't tested these in paper yet. I had the build slightly different at locals on Tuesday, but I'm now running the Immortal Dragon and the Arms of Gen X Re-Zero, whatever it's called. The Immortal Dragon doesn't matter, it's just a dark tuner. It's the only level 6 dark synchro tuner. But it's just your bridge into this guy. So what this guy is your Nibiru proof line. So a Stellar plus Toy Box can get you to this guy and let you keep comboing in 5 summons. He is a once per turn per attribute negate based on what attributes you have in your graveyard. You're typically going to have a dark and a light, so this negates Nibiru. If they don't Nibiru you on the opponent's turn, then you have a light monster negate and a dark monster negate, which can negate Requiem, Dia Bellstar, Feedsmith Engraver, all sorts of stuff. And then the last extra deck card, SP Lone Light. I think this is still warranted to run in a synchro deck because you can make it decently easy. Very commonly, you can go SP with Auxilla, do a banish, and then Phalanx bring Auxilla back. So it's pretty good. Only changes I may make is, of course, the Arms of Gen X package. That could be changed back to what it was at locals. I had the Apollousa and the pack bit. Apollousa runs the same purpose, but I think Gen X uses like 1 or 2 less bodies. I think it's 1 less body, really. The trade-off is that it's only 2 monster negates for specific types, whereas this would be 4. I believe I summoned it in one of the videos from this past locals. And then Packbit, always a good Centur-Ion card, but I figured I'm not going into it much in the White Forest build, so I cut it out. We'll just have to see if I want to bring it back in. And then I think Legatia is probably the only other sort of like up in the air extra deck slot, because you don't use her a whole lot, but she is good in the grind game. So that does it for the extra. And then the side deck. I am running 3 Molcharmy, 3 Phantasme. It would have been cool if I saw any of them on Tuesday at locals, but in theory, siding them both in for going second is really good. Phantasme less so against something like Tenpai, because you want to like make them go first. But Perulia really good and get you into your hand traps against like Fiendsmith Snake Eye or Fiendsmith Yubel. Seeing both is really funny because if they go close to heaven, you summon Phantasme and draw a card. Perulia, you can draw off anything they do. They have usually 3-ish summons from hand. People are still running stun, so back row hate, Cosmic plus Duster, and then I wasn't running it in the main, but I want to run this in the side just for game 2 or 3 if I have to go first. I want to guarantee that I Calamity Lock so I can keep going. And so I've got the Cross Out, the Called By, and then 1 Droll in the side deck here. Not main decking Droll. Droll feels really powerful in this format, but it also feels like a lot of decks can play through it, so it's kind of tricky. I don't personally play it, except for the 1 in the side for the Cross Out. So typically if I'm going first, I'm siding out like 1 copy of every hand trap to bring all this stuff in. And then if I know I'm playing against a deck that has a field spell or a continuous that's really important, I'll bring in these. But usually this is your going first package with these on the side. Going second, of course, is these guys. Plus Duster. Cosmic can also be kind of a going second tool. Some can Called By the grave sometimes if they have a graveyard effect like Promethean Princess. But yeah, haven't seen a whole lot of this in the siding, but in theory it's really good, so I'll keep messing with it and we'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it for the deck profile. Make sure you put any comments, questions, any changes you think I should make in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll catch you next time.